Everyone,
Good morning.
We've seen it sometimes.
happy Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve, is that how that goes?
I don't know, something like that.
Something like that.
Almost there.
Ho, ho, ho. He's already on his way. He's on the other side of the world.
He was in Japan this morning.
He's what?
He was in Japan or Russia over that way this morning.
Okay.
earlier.
Yeah,
Channel
he's
8
international
showed
date
him.
line.
Yeah.
I wonder if Santa has to go through the pollywogs and all that other business like the Navy does.
This morning.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Shellback. Uh-huh.
When he called the store, but he wouldn't talk to me. I go, Miller's Clothing? No. I can hear somebody breathing. I go, Miller's Clothing? No, the store's full of people hung up. Oh, Santa Claus, he didn't want to talk to me. I'm on the naughty list. I said, thanks, Santa.
This weekend.
That's like Kay's sister-in-law, when we did the gift exchange. She ended up with a lump of coal.
Oh.
And she says, I get one every year. So, all right. Well, let's have a word of prayer as we begin our lesson this morning. Father, thank you so much for watching over us during the night and making our bodies so that it can rejuvenate from rest. And we thank you for this special day that we can come together and to worship you collectively and to celebrate the salvation that you've provided for us through your Son. We thank you for the love that you give us each and every day, for your patience, for your mercy and your grace. We ask, Father, that you wrap your loving arms around those who are hurting today and this time of year, whether it be from a loss of any kind. And if we can be a comfort to them, use us, Father. We ask your blessings on this class and that we may draw closer to you and your Son. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Okay. So, if you notice on the top, we're still in the section of who is Jesus. And we're getting closer and closer to the, I wonder if I can do it this way. Oh, yeah, it works. Okay. So, as a matter of review, what happened prior to Jesus' arrival to the Gerasenes last week in your study? Where were they and what happened? You can't answer this, Eric. They're on a boat. Okay. And what about the boat?
We'll get into a storm.
Yeah, they went into a storm. And then what happened? Where was Jesus? He was asleep. And they were saying the boat is awash. You got water coming over the boat, but he was asleep in the back. So I'm trying to figure this out. If he's asleep in the back, and I think he was on pillows or something. One, how big is the boat? And two, if there's water in the boat, how come he didn't get wet?
Because he was in control of the whole thing.
That's what
I'm thinking about there might have been an elevation somewhere in the back of the boat.
Wait a minute, how do you know it didn't get wet?
Yeah, we don't know for sure.
He was asleep.
Maybe.
But usually if you get wet in the middle of your sleep, do you wake up?
Just roll over.
Wait till tonight.
Wait till the night.
I don't know, he didn't answer.
But okay,
Is it not a possibility that, I mean, he was asleep, but he knew full well what was going on. So
Well-
I think he was kind of waiting to see what they were gonna do.
the other thing is, when they left, I mean, he was tired. You know he was tired because of what was going on. So they crossed over, and so, all right, so they wake him up. All right, let's see.
They were testing his faith. He was testing their faith.
Okay, yes, totally. So why do you suppose he decided to have them set sail to the eastern shore of the lake.
He had work to do on the other side. And he
Yeah.
He knew it.
Yeah, he did have work to
Yeah,
do.
I was there.
Yeah, and how many?
Legion, well, yeah, over on the other side, yeah,
Just one soul.
yeah. With
Just one soul.
50 legions of
Uh-huh.
demons.
So, all right, so, and all along the first 4 chapters, Jesus has been healing and casting out demons. And, I mean, droves of people have been coming to him. So today, we're going to look at chapter 5, and it's a continuation of what happened in chapter 4. But before we go there, let's switch over to our video. By the way, did you notice what language they're talking in this video? You have a narrator, but then you'll hear them speaking. They're not speaking in English.
Of the Gerasenes.
Uh-oh. Don't
They
do
went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirit came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. And the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please, come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it, and the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother, and the disciples who were with him, and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this, and told them to give her something to eat.
And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when
You figure out what language he might have been using?
Aramaic.
Yeah, Aramaic. I believe it was Aramaic. So, all right, yeah, on your papers you have the map of the area. So what was Jesus's home city?
Capernaum.
Capernaum, yeah. So, and they sailed to, well, Gergesa, or the Gergesenes. There's some question about exactly where it was located, but we do know from the biblical account it was on the seacoast. Now, I think we talked about the geography of the area in our introduction lesson, and most of the villages on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee were fishing villages, and there was a lot of commerce there. On the eastern shore, it was kind of desolate, and so in the video, it kind of portrayed that, because you had a seacoast, but you didn't have a whole lot there. So they sailed to Gergesa, And this is where our story takes place, and then he goes back to there. Now, you notice in the bottom right corner, Decapolis, okay? And so the Decapolis is actually, and we'll see that here in the next slide, it is a region of 10 cities, okay? These were Hellenistic cities. In other words, they were established by the Greeks, but the Romans held on to them once they came into being. It's an eastern frontier of the Greco-Roman Empire, and it's east of the Jordan Valley. All right? This was actually outside of Jewish authority, so the Sanhedrin had no power here. So what would that tell you? Give you any idea? Since the Sanhedrin didn't have any power, who did have power? If it was a Rome, part of the Roman Empire, Rome was there. Although whether they had a garrison there or not, we don't know. At least I didn't find anything. So since there was no Jewish authority, who do you suppose made up most of the population in that area?
Gentiles.
Yeah, and what gives you that idea?
There wouldn't have been a whole lot of Jews for the Jewish authorities to rule over.
Okay. And what else gives you that idea? There was something else in the story that's pretty obvious.
Pass.
Pass? Okay. Something happened in the story. Now wait a minute. Because the Gentiles were a majority. There were Jews there. So the other question is, this demon-possessed man, and I don't know, was he a Jew or was he a Gentile?
The Bible doesn't specify.
And we also know that Jesus, his mission was to the Jews, to the lost children of Israel. He went over to this area for this one man to exorcise these demons out of him. Was he a Jew or a Gentile? We have to kind of try to figure that out. The other thing is, what were these people keeping? What was their occupation?
Pigs.
They were pig farmers.
Yeah.
Would a Jew be a pig farmer?
No.
Shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be. Yeah, not in good standing, all right? So yeah, it was probably Gentile. Okay. This area was considered to be immoral and unclean. Now the fact that this demon-possessed man, where did he live?
Okay.
Caves and, what do they call them? Where do you put a dead guy?
Two.
Tombs. All right, so if you're living in a tomb, according to Jewish law, what does that make you?
Unclean.
Unclean. All right, so it's an unclean area, but Jesus went there. The multitude of disciples came from here because of the healings, and in Matthew chapter 4, verses 23 and 25, we could read about that. So there's a lot of people that came from this area. How do you suppose that happened? What did Jesus, go ahead.
Providence of God.
Okay, and what did Jesus tell that one guy to do? Remember, Jesus refused this guy to go back with him.
Tell everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the scriptures say he went throughout the Decapolis, which would be those 10 cities, which is listed up here. Now, there is a city on the top of this particular map. I don't think it's on yours, no. But on the top right hand, there's a familiar place on this map. Caesarea Philippi. Does that ring a bell to anybody? This is where Peter's confession. Jesus was there, and they were in the regions of Caesarea Philippi. There you go. And this is where Peter's confession was, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Christ's reply was, "Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this unto you, but my Father which is in heaven." Okay, so the Decapolis is actually 10 cities, and they were Hellenistic cities, but we do know that a lot of Christians came from that area. Now, were they Jews? Were they Gentiles? Were they both? When did this happen? We don't know, but we know a lot. Okay, how would you describe the life of the demon-possessed man?
Lousy.
Okay,
Alone, frantic, probably, was he?
alone? All right.
Out of his head most of the time, I suppose.
Yeah.
Depressed.
Depressed? Destitute?
Why me?
Yeah. Was he in his right mind?
No.
No. And what kind of strength did he have?
Strong.
Big strength.
Yeah, I think he was stronger than any man because of the demon possession. What were the demons afraid of? You know, they approached Christ. Anytime a demon or a possessed person approaches Christ, one of the things that they do is what?
Beg for the life.
Yeah, but they also do something else, as they're saying.
Call him out.
No. No. Well, yeah, but they do something to Jesus.
Question.
They question him, they taunt him.
Okay. Did he bow down
Yeah.
or fall down in front of Jesus?
Why would he fall down if he's the creator?
Not Jesus. No, not Jesus.
The man
The
can't
demon-possessed person.
Yes, he fell down.
They bow down.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
They knew about Jesus' power.
Yeah, they knew. Yeah. So why were they afraid? What were they afraid of? They knew about Jesus. And they asked Jesus a question about, have you come to torment us before our time? Is that what he said?
Maybe to send them already into Hades or hell.
Yeah, to the abyss. And yeah, that's exactly what they were afraid of. It wasn't their time yet, but they were afraid. They were going to go there. Some people call it the abyss.
Is that what he meant though when they said, "Don't send us into the country"? I mean, were the demons afraid
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they were going to be dispersed?
Dispersed into the abyss. Because, all right, so keep that in mind, because they didn't want to be, they had to have something to live in. Okay?
right, any person has a host.
All right, so they didn't want to be. So then why did Legion wish to be placed in the pigs?
That's a remarkable question.
So, okay, so you're in a human.
They need to possess a body.
Exactly right. They had to possess a body.
Yeah.
So they were put in the pigs. All right.
So what happened when the pigs died then?
Very good. Because wait a minute. What's my next question? No, I think it's something to do with a life lesson. But yeah, that's a question I came up with. So I would imagine they went to the abyss. They had nowhere to go. And they figured if they could possess the pigs, then they'd have, they have it. But then the pigs all died. Now where did they go? That'd be an interesting. I tried to find something, but I couldn't find anything theologically about what happened to the demons, but all the pigs were dead.
You gotta consider these farmers, they're responsible for those animals to their masters.
Yeah.
So they've lost their livelihood and
Uh-huh.
maybe their lives because they lost.
Yeah, see, so now we're looking at a economical issue as well. 2,000 pigs,
A couple of you.
that's a lot of bacon.
That's a good idea. I'm bacon today.
Or ham.
In the spirit of
I
the
heard-
Why are you looking at
I
me?
heard, because I heard her smirk. Uh-huh.
Heard me smirk?
I heard you smirk. It was a.
You know, smirking is where I felt.
Audible.
So, okay, so these people lost their livelihood, they ran away, but they come back and they see this man clothed in his right mind, and they were fearful. What were they afraid of?
Well, who can do this?
Well, they saw the power. Thank goodness.
Okay,
Or they heard about it. They didn't see it. They heard about it.
but the ones that were there,
Yeah.
okay, because they, you know, there were people that tried to take care of this guy and they couldn't. We don't know where he got his food from. I would think that since he was alone and destitute, and he lived in the tombs, he ate what he could eat, but I would imagine he was pretty malnourished as well. So they show up and they tell Jesus, leave. You have the Messiah, the Son of God, show up. He does a wondrous work. And then the people ask him to get out, go away. Why?
It's beyond me.
Well,
They saw the power, but they also saw a lot of their life source go right over them.
yeah, they're afraid that was.
I mean, they were pig farmers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 2,000 who just died.
Yeah. Well, couldn't you kind of harvest some of those pigs and
Make bacon quickly.
what do you think, Butch? Could they get some of those pigs and still use the meat?
I don't know, but that man was just like a prodigal son. He was picking the pig food along right with the pigs.
Okay, yeah, that's probably where he got some of his nourishment from.
Yeah, he'd have been fighting with them for food, part of the food.
I thought a few of those pigs that they had in the movie were cute.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, okay, so
My friend Stephanie went in Aussie.
what life lessons can we learn from this account? So we'll look at some here. The demon-possessed man. He had a family, and he probably had a livelihood, but he became demon-possessed. So as a result, he ended up. Let's see here. I'm looking.
He didn't want to go back to his work for the simple reason he wanted to go with the Lord.
He wanted to go with the Lord, but because of his demon possession, what kind of bondage was he in?
Spiritual, deep spiritual.
Yeah, he was in deep bondage. Okay, and that would be question number 8. So he was in deep bondage. How does that apply today to mankind? Deep bondage.
And pray for deliverance from our sins.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, Terry,
Right at the hour.
you had something? No? So how do we see mankind in deep bondage?
Deep in sin.
Deep in sin. And if you're in deep bondage, how do you get out of it? Yourself. How do you get out of it? How do you release yourself from the shackles?
You can't get out of yourself.
As we're looking at that video, the man, they said he had shackles on him. And as they portrayed this, he had these shackles. Those were weapons. He could have been flinging those at the Lord. And if you notice in the video, the only one that approached that man was the Lord himself. Everybody else stayed away.
But he had power over him.
Yes, he
wasn't
did.
afraid of him.
No, he wasn't afraid of him. He just went right up to him. And, the man would go behind him and he just stood there. Everybody else was afraid of him. But the deep bondage that we see, we can actually see in humankind because of sin. And we have to think about that when you're looking at a family member or a friend or a neighbor. They're in deep bondage. And who are they in deep bondage to? Satan. Just like this demon-possessed man. Jesus shows his power over the demonic realm in this particular instance. So, what about today? Does he have the same power? Can he do the same things?
Good.
Are there, let's ask, this is probably a question for discussion or debate. Are there demon possession or demon possessed people today?
Yes.
I know of one less.
Do you know of one less?
Bertrand Lund.
Oh,
He got lit up.
okay. Amber liked your question, liked your answer.
Maybe took care of it,
So there are people that you seem to think they are demon possessed.
If, wait a minute, if they are, then how are they gonna get that demon out of that person? Because we don't have nobody here today that has that kind of power given to the apostles had.
What if it's not demon possessed, but like demon influenced? It like
Well, that's a good question. Demon influence?
yeah, so
Yeah.
like they don't possess you, but they can still make your life, you know, bad and try to lead you to bad choices.
Oh, who's your allegiance to? Yeah. And I know that there are people who do what? Worship Satan? Okay. But Jesus said himself, he said, if you're not with me, so who are you for? The other question is the statement that we find out in Romans. He talks about the old man, the new man, and the slave to sin or the slave to God. So you're a slave either way you look at it. And are you a voluntary slave? When you're serving God, are you a voluntary slave? Yeah, you choose that. When you're serving Satan, are you a voluntary slave? I see the look on your face, David.
It just sounds like an oxymoron, voluntary slavery.
Well, isn't that what it is?
You make dumb decisions, is that what you want after?
No?
I don't think so.
No. If you're a slave, you're not a volunteer.
But if you put on Christ, if you're one of his soldiers,
You know, I think what Satan does is he tries to give you the appearance of free will and like, oh, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to do all this stuff. He gives you appearance, but really you're a slave to him. You know, when you
unknowingly,
yeah, but when you have Christ, you have true free will, and you're using it for good.
yeah, mankind has always strived for freedom of some sort. And Christ gives us that ultimate freedom because we're free from the shackles of sin and the guilt that goes along with it, as well as the punishment that goes with it. Jesus being asked to leave the region. So, what does rejection of the Lord do? So these people chased Jesus out. So they rejected him.
They really don't know who he is.
No, that's a good point because this is the section we're in. Who is this Jesus? And this is the first time Jesus shows up to this area. If they see all this power, get him out of here. Maybe they thought he was some kind of wizard or something.
It's fear.
Fear?
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, I think it was motivated on fear. But then Jesus tells that fella to go to his people, tell him what the Lord has done. And he became kind of an ambassador. But without it, they're totally lost. What's the best tool in sharing the gospel. Now we'll use this guy that Jesus said, no, I don't want you to come with me. I want you to go to your people and tell them what the Lord has done. So what's the best tool in sharing the gospel?
What's it called, witnessing?
Yeah, witnessing, telling people what the Lord has done for you in your life. And maybe that might open up a door or two, or 3 or 4. How about you see somebody that you haven't seen for a while and they say, boy, I remember the time when you were like this and you did this, 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 and this, and I'm going, well, maybe so, but I'm not like that anymore. That man is dead. This is what has happened. Okay. Telling others what God has done for us is the best way of kind of opening the door, if people will hear it. And I guess it's a matter of timeliness with that individual. And it's usually a friend, associate, or a colleague of some sort, especially when you're sitting around just talking. So, in Mark's writing here, the incident with the demon-possessed man, they go back to Capernaum. As soon as Jesus gets to shore, what happens?
Man comes to him, wants his daughter healed. Jairus.
Okay, we have Jairus showing up. The crowds were there.
The woman with the woman.
Yeah, so now we have you ever had it, and I'm sure each one of us has, when you show up and then you're inundated with needs and demands
Yesterday.
all at the same time?
Yesterday when I got there.
Okay, yeah, and I know Kay, you have when you was working at the hospital. You walk in the door and boom, boom, boom. You got 3 things hitting you right in the face. Okay, nursing's like that. Medicine is like that. Ben would probably attest to that. Anytime you're dealing with people or a service industry, look at a waitress. Okay. How many tables has she got? 6. Okay, it never stops. So Jesus is inundated. So Mark is creating a tension here that is kind of adding to the story of who Jesus is. So here, the crowds are following Christ. Jairus comes up and pleads with him. Now, Jesus probably knew Jairus because he was the synagogue ruler, and this is where Jesus taught. The bleeding woman, we have the press of the crowd. Jesus is on his way to Jairus' daughter. Now he has a distraction because of the woman. Healing power is released, which I thought was done very well in the video, where Jesus stumbles and he turns around and he's looking. We have a death to deal with, a ridicule, and a resurrection. So this adds all to the tension of the story. So we're going to look at this real quick. What socioeconomic problems did the bleeding woman experience financially?
All those doctors and they couldn't heal her.
Couldn't heal her. She was probably poor and broke. Okay? And her condition got worse. Physically, well, she was bleeding, so that means she was weak. Couldn't carry enough oxygen, so she didn't have any stamina. Let's see, what else? I would probably think that even though she tried, she was probably a little malnourished from a medical perspective.
Right.
What about socially?
She'd have been considered unclean.
Yes, she would have been considered unclean. So from a relationship standpoint, she was unclean.
Outcast.
Yeah, she was an outcast, Terry.
When she touched him, according to their laws, that made him unclean. But by him curing her, that didn't count then.
Correct.
According to what I read. Some of the
Yeah,
stuff.
and you know, it's interesting you bring that up because even previously with a leper, Jesus touched the leper, and the leper is considered unclean.
Yeah, but he's like soap, he's self-cleaning.
Yes. There's a Harveyism there. Yeah. So, yeah, socially, she was an outcast. She was unclean. All right? So what about spiritually? If she's unclean, could she go to worship or could she go to synagogue? I don't think women were allowed in a synagogue.
I tell you what she had, a strong faith.
Yeah. Yeah, a strong faith. So, why was she fearful after being discovered? And I think we may have touched on it.
Because she had touched him, but she was truthful about it, that it was me that touched him.
Okay, but she was also unclean. You think she thought maybe Jesus would be upset with her because she was being unclean?
She took something from him that she didn't even ask for to his face.
Okay.
She said, if I touch him.
Mm-hmm.
She might have been a little bit fearful of what the crowd's reaction to that was gonna be too.
Yeah.
Because she had really been outcast, so.
Mm-hmm. But you see, there was love in this. When you see Jesus' reaction and what he says,
Your faith,
go in peace.
He said something like, my daughter, something like
Yeah.
that. Your faith has healed thee.
Uh-huh.
And he even said that to men different times. He would
Uh-huh.
say that.
Yeah.
He would say something.
Go in peace. The fact that he called her daughter, and the fact she was a Jew, so that she would be considered a daughter. And then, wait a minute. With the little girl, they ridicule Christ. He says she's asleep. Jairus is beside himself. She's dead. Jesus says, do not fear. Just believe. There's a sermon there. Couple of things here. Conclusion. Miracles. They bear witness to the deity of Christ and the confirmation of the Word. Christ, we know, Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And the miracles that he did challenge us to trust him in life's storms and in the face of death. Do not fear. Just believe. Next week we're going to look at chapter 6. And so thank you for your attention and Merry Christmas.